Well, good morning, Washington Wizards. We're just doing a little brief test before we get to our actual production and presentation about North Carolina class size. So I'm just testing the sound, and Miss Wengler, who's our assistant principal intern, is watching us live stream to make sure that our sound is good and we can be seen clearly. So when she comes back from doing the remote test, we will go ahead and start our broadcast. So get yourself comfortable. The PowerPoint that we're going to be sharing today, Ms. Wengler just gave us the thumbs up that we're in good shape, so thank you. I'm going to wait about 2 minutes so we can start officially at 11 o'clock, but if you're waiting for us to start, when you went on our website, there's a PowerPoint you can click on and download. It's the PowerPoint that Ms. Von Haefen and I will be referencing during our discussion about class size mandate today. So take a moment to pull that up. You can follow along. We're not showing that PowerPoint on the screen because you can look at it more easily when you download it during the broadcast. So we'll give you about 60 seconds and then we'll get started. All right, well, here we go. It's 11 o'clock and we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you if you're joining us live for our live stream to talk about North Carolina class size and its impact on schools, and specifically its impact on our magnet school, Washington GT. I'm Bob Grant, your principal.
I'm Julie Von Haefen, and I'm a parent here at Washington. I have a third grader and a fifth grader and one child that went all the way through now. And I was the PTA president here at Washington a few years ago, and now I serve as the Wake County PTA Council president. And I'm also on the board of the North Carolina PTA, where I serve as the advocacy chair.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Ms. Von Haefen. So we're going to attempt to give you some background information to help you be informed about how the impact of the K-3 class size mandate is impacting schools across North Carolina, but specifically the impact it could potentially have here at Washington next year. If you're just joining us, I know that you clicked on our website for the live stream. There's also a PowerPoint that's on our website that you can download. We'll be referencing that as we talk today. That PowerPoint won't show on your screen, but you can view it on your own as we go through the presentation. We love questions or feedback or comments from our viewers. If you're watching live, if you're watching this recorded, I can't answer your questions. But if you're live, there's two ways that you can reach out. You can post on our chat on the when you're logged into YouTube and post those comments, and then Ms. Wengler, our admin intern, will share those out and we'll attempt to answer them. You can also email me at bgrant, that's BGRANT, at WCPSS.net. And if you send me an email to bgrant@WCPSS.net, Ms. Wengler will read your question to us and we will attempt to answer here live. So I'm going to turn it over to the first part to Ms. Von Haefen. She's been really active and knowledgeable about this issue, and she's going to present some background information about the class size mandate and its impacts in general. And then I will join her to talk about potential impact here at Washington. And then Ms. Von Haefen will wrap up and give us some possible next steps that you could take if you have concerns about the impact of the North Carolina class size mandate. All right, Ms. Von Haefen.
Okay. I just wanted to add on with Mr. Grant, if you have questions and you're watching this after it's live streamed, you can still email him and he can pass that on to me if you have questions as well. So I just wanted to add that. So I'm going to look at the PowerPoint, which is in front of me. So if I'm not looking right at the camera, it's because I'm looking at my notes. But I just wanted to start out giving you guys a brief overview of how we got to this place with the K-3 mandate. And basically, the North Carolina legislature a few years ago decided that they were going to impose a class size restriction on K-3 class sizes. And it was supposed to go into effect this year. Last spring, there was a reprieve because of a lot of feedback that they got from parents and other groups that it was not a good thing. There's a lot of people saying that it was going to hurt our kids, and so they put it off a year. And they actually lowered class sizes this year slightly. So there are some effects that we have been seeing here in Wake County around the mandate already and across the state. But the full effect of the mandate is going to go into effect next year in 2018-19. You might have heard about a law called HB 13. That was passed unanimously last year by the House, but the North Carolina Senate never brought it to vote. The HB 13 is a fix for the class size mandate that allows school districts to have some more flexibility around how many kids they can have per class. And I won't get into all the crazy details. There's a lot of funding issues and allotments and things like that, but I'll kind of try to give a basic overview of how that all works in a minute. There was a special session in October where the legislature could have brought this up again and tried to fix the issues. There was also a special session that just happened this month, but we've been hearing a lot of feedback from legislators that they're not going to address this issue until now. We're hearing in March. The school district has to report certain data, and that's due at the end of February. And so we've been hearing that legislators want to see that data before they decide what to do as far as fixing the mandate. So let me talk a little bit about what the mandate requires for school districts. Right now, class sizes are consistently the same number across the board from K to 3. Right now, the district has to have an average number of students of 20 in K to 3, and individual classrooms cannot be more than 23 students in a classroom from K to 3. Next year in 2018-19, the class size mandate requires that kindergarten classes have no more than 18 students in a class. First grade is 16 students in a class, and second and third grade is 17 students in a class. So as you can say, it's very inconsistent, which we don't understand why they changed, from the 18 down to 16 back up to 17. That makes it very difficult for schools to plan classes when every grade is different. And it also, of course, lowers those class sizes a great deal from the 20 and 23 that it is this year down to 18, 16, and 17. Basically, the way that teacher funding works in North Carolina is that one funding allotment is given for all teachers. So the reason that a lot of parents, administrators, school districts, everyone across the state is concerned is that when you have to hire more K to 3 teachers so you can create more classrooms, that same allotment is also used to pay for art, music, specialists, all these other teachers who aren't typical classroom teachers, and we call those specialist teachers. So if you hear things in the news about specialist teachers, so those teachers are paid for by that same allotment. So if administrators like Mr. Grant have to use more money to hire more K to 3 teachers, he has to take that money from somewhere. And that means possibly eliminating some of those teaching positions. Principals have used teacher allotment funds, like I said, to hire those types of teachers. And several years ago, they used to have an allotment for those teachers, but that was taken away. So like I said, all those teachers are paid for out of the same allotment. Some of the impacts that we've heard and seen already and that are going to be even worse next year across the state are one, that, like I said, those K2 teachers, that the hiring of more K through teachers is going to eliminate art, music, and PE teaching positions. We've also heard that with the classroom, the actual physical space of the classrooms, they might have to take away classrooms that are used for art, music, other types of classrooms like that. So that means that art and those kind of classes might move to on a cart, so to speak, where an art teacher doesn't have an actual art room, but she or he is taking those materials and moving them around throughout the school. Also, as you know, well, you might not know, but over fourth grade, from fourth to 12th grade, there are no classroom size limits for classrooms in North Carolina. So if you have to have lower class sizes in K to 3 and you have to hire more teachers for those positions, that means that you also might have to take away positions in, say, fourth and fifth grade. So if you take away a fourth grade teacher to pay for an additional third grade teacher, that means those fourth grade classes are going to get larger. And there's no limit on the amount of kids that you can have in fourth and fifth grades. We're already seeing fourth and fifth grade classes in Wake County of 30 to 35 students, and that's even before the mandate takes full effect. We also are worried about middle and high schools because of the overall funding needs. Again, if school districts have to switch funding to K to 3 teachers, they could possibly eliminate electives or other class positions in middle and high school to switch that funding into our elementary schools. They can make those classes larger. They could eliminate electives or other special positions that aren't required by the state. You can also create a lot of combination classes, K1, 2, 3. Under the law, there is no requirement that you have to, so you could put 2 kindergarten classes in one physical classroom with 2 teachers. As long as there's that ratio of students to teacher, you can have them all in one physical space. So there'll be more of those combination classrooms as well. We've been hearing a lot since last year, and Wake County has done an incredible job of doing a lot of research about how the class size mandate is going to affect schools here. They've actually put together a task force, including 2 elementary school principals, one who's a year-round principal and one who is a traditional calendar principal. And they have actually spoken or surveyed every principal in the district and asked them, how is this going to affect your school, and can you make the changes that you need to in order to accommodate the law? And at the last meeting that we heard a report from these principals, they said there's actually 27 elementary schools in Wake County who cannot accommodate the mandate requirements no matter what they do. K to 1 classrooms have to be on the first floor with egress for the smaller students. So for example, here at Washington, we could not move kindergarten up to the 3rd floor of our school. That's not allowed under the law. The other thing is, a lot of people have said, why don't you just add more trailers or more mobile classrooms onto your property? Mobile classrooms take over a year to get approved and set up. So we just don't have time to do that, one. And a lot of schools don't have the physical land to put more trailers on their property either. Wake County estimates that they would need to literally build 14 new elementary schools by the fall in order to accommodate all the physical classrooms that are needed, which is over about 9,000 physical or 9,000 seats, basically. So they're trying to rearrange about 9,000 students to accommodate the classroom mandate. You might have also heard that they've put more caps on enrollment at many, many schools in the area. And they've also closed a lot of schools to transfer students. And that's all as a result of them planning for this mandate to go into effect next year. So I'm going to let Mr. Grant talk a little bit about what the mandate might look like here at Washington if it goes into effect in the fall.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Von Haefen. What a great overview of some of the challenges we face across North Carolina and in Wake County. And I want to drill down a little bit deeper and talk about the possible impact at Washington, where you most likely have a child if you're watching our live stream. So you probably chose Washington as a magnet school. We're excited to be here if you're a base student parent, because Washington has historically been one of the highest applied to magnet elementary schools in Wake County year after year. And it's because of the outstanding program that we have, the electives that we offer, the different choices that kids have to grow talents or potential talents, whether they're taking band, orchestra, or aeronautics. You need spaces to help live out our magnet theme. And that's one of the reasons why some families are willing to put their child on a bus for an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes, which is the outer end of our bus rides one way, because they believe so strongly in the strength of our program. So it's important to recognize how some of these mandates can impact us. Now, at Washington, we're creative problem solvers, and that's my job as your principal to make sure that our kids have the best education possible. And I know going into next year, we're going to have a successful program. But the key is it really going to be the best program it can be? And are we being funded and set up in ways as a school to provide that type of program for our kids? And we have choices. So let's just think a little bit more about what it means. Now, all of us probably celebrate, woohoo, smaller class sizes. And I'm a proponent of smaller class sizes. Studies have shown that when you have smaller class sizes, the ability for teachers to focus on kids and strengthen learning that takes place is increased. So smaller class sizes are a good thing. The challenge is, how do you go about implementing something like smaller class size? And as Ms. Von Haefen has pointed out, the steps so far taken across North Carolina are to require changes in class size, but not link that with funds or long-range planning to help make that a strong transition for our North Carolina schools. So when the legislature doesn't provide the funding to continue the number of teachers that we have in the classroom, and when we have to compromise the instruction within the building because of limited teaching space when you're trying to create more classrooms within a building, that presents some difficulties. So let me just frame for you a little bit about what that potentially means going into next year. So if we continue on the path that we're currently on, and you have a voice to change that path, but if we continue on this path we're currently on, Washington needing to create 3 additional classes this coming year. Now, historically, Washington has had about 4 classes per grade for 6 different grade levels, or 24 classrooms. As we have shrunk the number of students in a classroom and expanded the number of classrooms needed, we're currently sitting on 27 classrooms. We had to do some rearranging in the past year. And if the class size mandate goes ahead as planned, we would have to have a total of 30 different classrooms here at Washington to support just the core classes that we have. So where do they come from? Well, if we're going to reduce class size, that would mean this coming year we would add an additional kindergarten class. So we go from 4 kindergartens to 5 kindergarten classes. We would need to add a combination class where we have first and second grade students together with one teacher, because we would not fall within the guidelines of the class size mandate for first or second grade. So we have to add an additional class and place first and second graders together doing shared learning in that classroom with one teacher. That's another classroom. So that's 2 so far, an additional kindergarten, an additional 1-2 combo, and it would require a extra 3rd grade classroom, and we would go from 5 third grades to 6 third grades. You've walked around Washington, you're probably scratching your head and saying, Mr. Grant, there aren't any extra classrooms anywhere. How are you going to make that happen at Washington and effectively educate my kid? So a number of pieces that we're looking at, and this isn't a done deal right now. We, of course, still have some time to make changes within this law, and we would have to figure out the best way to do it. But here's some potential things that might take place if we're looking to meet those needs. We would potentially add a extra kindergarten classroom, and that would most likely have to go into one of our specialist spaces, music or dance. So we would move music or dance out of their space and potentially have them working in one of the mobile units that we share with the Boys and Girls Club. Mrs. Von Haefen mentioned something like art on the cart or music on the cart, and that's one potential where you would have the music program having to serve kids and be moving for different elective classes. And if you've had your child take a class like African drumming or keyboarding, you can imagine what a challenge it would be to be moving those types of things from place to place, as opposed to a dedicated space where kids are really learning music in depth. So that's one move. Then you would have to think about a first and second grade combination class. That might potentially mean that Mr. Baston, our AIG teacher, moves out of his dedicated space. He would move into a smaller space where we have students who are taking ESL classes for extra reading and writing support. He would go into that smaller classroom. The ESL teacher would probably go into our staff lounge. That's where teachers eat lunch. We've got a bathroom and a soda machine. That would be off limits to teachers to use because you'd have kids in there learning to make another classroom space. And then thirdly, the extra third grade classroom. Where would that go? So there's no additional spaces on our third floor where we currently house third, fourth, and fifth grade. And most likely that would mean disassembling our innovation lab where we currently have the computers, iPads, green screens, our news studio. Students do more than just technology there. It's a space to do creative projects. That space would be no longer, and that would be turned into a third grade classroom. Another impact it could have, and Ms. Von Haefen mentioned this, is because funds are not being provided through the state to pay for these extra teachers, schools themselves are having to figure out where those teaching positions come from. So as your principal, I'm given months of employment by the state, and I use those months of employment to hire staff or personnel for our incredible program. A teacher takes 10 months of employment. So if I don't have an additional 30 months of employment, because we talked about another kindergarten, another third grade class, and another combination 1-2 teacher, that's 30 months or 3 extra teaching positions. If those aren't funded, where do those come from? So potential ways that schools would have to create those classes based on the mandate for class size changes would be the following. And these are options that you would consider as an administrator. I would take a fourth or a fifth grade teacher, because there's no class size limit in fourth or fifth grade. They can get pretty much as big as required. So you could have 30 or 40 kids in a fourth or fifth grade classroom. I would have to take one of our fourth or fifth grade teachers. Currently, we have 4 in each grade level. Let's just take fourth grade, for example. I would take a fourth grade teaching position. Next year, we would only have 3 fourth grade classes instead of 4. And you would go from having 24 or 25 kids in a fourth grade class because of the loss of a teacher. You'd have 33 to 35 kids in a classroom. And we have smaller classrooms here at Washington because we're an older building. I would then take that teacher that I pulled from the upper grades, and I would use that position to be a first and second grade combo, or the third grade classroom teacher, or the first or the kindergarten teacher. Another way that administrators might be faced to create additional positions, because again, at this point, there's not the funding there that's going to make that happen, would be to lose a music or an art or a dance or other specialist teacher, and students would no longer have those classes, which I feel, and I know that you do, are critical for the growth of our kids and to engage in developing diverse skills and gifts that students have, and learning in different ways to engage kids. You would simply lose that teaching position. We would no longer have music or an art class or a dance class, and we would take that 10-month position and use it to then create a classroom teacher, for example, in kindergarten. Another challenge or another pathway might be, as a magnet school principal, you have some extra months for additional magnet school elective teaching, or I have months that I use for literacy to help students grow. Myself, I was a struggling reader in school and went to a reading teacher for 3 years to really help me get on track. That type of instruction is key in our elementary school years, so we can have students that are proficient in literacy for lifelong success. But I might have to take those months of employment, put them together, and make another teaching position cobbled together from some magnet months, from some literacy months, and then make the extra classroom. So those are just different possibilities that we might face at Washington when we're thinking about how this class size might impact us. I know we've gone through a lot of information, and you probably have a number of thoughts going through your head, and you're scratching your head and you're saying, yes, Smaller class sizes are great, and they are, but we need to work through them in a way that's logical, time to prepare for it, and have the funding tied to it to make it a success. So as you're going through and considering that, you might want to think, okay, what can I do? Mr. Grant, you shared about what you might have to do in Washington to best educate our kids in the less than ideal circumstances. But what is it that I can do as a community member or a parent? We're going to wrap up with Ms. Von Haefen, our PTA Council President and Washington parent, with giving you some next steps that you could take to help make a difference with this class size issue. Again, if you have questions that have come to mind as we've been talking, you can post them on the live chat on your computer screen. You can also email me at bgrant@wcpss.net. If you're watching live, we'll answer right now. And if I get the email later on, I will work to answer your question or share it with Ms. Von Haefen, who can also answer it. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to turn over to Ms. Von Haefen, who's going to wrap up our live chat.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. As a parent at Washington, what Mr. Grant just shared is, alarming to me because, of course, as we know, the reason, if you're a magnet parent like me, we sent our kids to Washington because of all the amazing programming, and to hear that this law might affect our schools so greatly like that, it's upsetting. And I hope that you might have heard about the law and you maybe heard about it in the news and you thought, oh, that doesn't affect me or doesn't affect my fifth grader or my kids going on to middle school. But I hope that you will think about all the kids that might still be here at Washington and think about the great experience that you had here, and that you'll take that energy and maybe your feelings of loss that you might be feeling right now and do something about it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what you can do to maybe help us affect some change around this law. So as I told you at the beginning, I'm a strong PTA advocate. I've been involved with PTA for 8 years now, and I'm such a big proponent of its mission. Its mission is to help make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. So I'm here to talk to you about how to advocate for your child and how to be that one voice that we can help advocate for kids here at Washington and really all across the state, because this is really going to affect every kid, whether they go to a magnet school, they go to a rural school that's already dealing with teacher shortages. There's classes and schools in North Carolina that already don't have enough teachers, and to think of them having to hire 10 or 15 more teachers next year, they're already having long-term subs in these classrooms. And so think about that as well, not just here in Wake County, it's really everywhere. So the most important thing that you can do at this point is to contact your state representative, in the North Carolina House, and especially in the North Carolina Senate. The North Carolina House members have been actually very receptive to all the advocacy and the people contacting them around this issue. Like I said, they passed HB 13 last year, but the Senate is the one that doesn't seem to be wanting to take up this issue. So I encourage you to contact both your House and your Senate members. But if you're only going to do one thing, contact your North Carolina senator. If you don't know who your North Carolina senator or House representative is, it's very easy to find out. You go to www.ncledge.net, and right on the homepage, that's North Carolina Legislature's website, right on the homepage, they have a button that says, "Who represents me?" And all you do is push that button, you put in your address information, and they will tell you exactly who represents you. It has their contact information, their email, their phone number. You can do anything. You can call, you can write. A handwritten letter is very effective. A lot of people have been actually sending pictures of their kids and saying, this law is going to affect these kids. We need your help, especially around Christmas. A lot of people did that with Christmas cards. You can send them an email, which is the easiest way, really. And they have to log every single email that comes into them about this issue. And believe me, they're getting a lot of emails. So you won't be the only one, contacting them. or go down to the legislature and visit your representative. If they're not there, they usually have a staff member that's there in the office all the time. And sometimes it's easier or less intimidating to talk to that staff member. They are very well versed on this issue. They've been contacted about it for months. So they should be able to speak to you with no problem. Please share with them how this unfunded mandate is going to affect your child, especially here at Washington. You can share with them how much you love our school, how much the programming means to your child, and you can talk to them about losing our iLab. You could come in here and take a picture of it and say what an amazing place it is and how we've been working on this iLab for, I know, several years. Since I was a PTA president, we started funding, doing this flexible seating, and Miss Tuttle got here to Washington and she's made some amazing changes. And to hear that we might lose that all is upsetting to me. So I hope that you will go and share with them those stories. About these personal stories are the most impactful things that you can do. So whether you just do that through an email, a quick phone call, that is really what we need from you at this point, is for parents to be contacting them and get some action on this issue. You can schedule a meeting with them if they're not there. Sometimes they have chats outside. I know our school board members do this at local coffee houses. I know Congressman Price from Washington, D.C. comes and does these types of things. So you can get on their websites, find out where they're going to be, talk to them. Especially if you live in the Morrisville area, Senator Chowdhury has been an amazing advocate and partner with the PTA and with a lot of groups. Please, if that is your representative, just express to him your thanks, because he has been on the ground working for us. He has kids in Wake County Public Schools at Wiley Elementary. So please, if that's your representative, contact him and thank him. The other thing is this short session. So the legislature is going to come back for their short session on May 16th. So that is the next time that they're formally scheduled to come into session. But we've been hearing that they're going to come back into session in March. So like I said, I think at the beginning of the presentation, they're saying that they want to get this data from the school districts at the end of February. And then supposedly they're going to call another special session in March to address this issue. That is another thing, that if you do contact your representatives, please tell them that they have to address this issue before May 16th. There's two reasons. One is that Wake County Public Schools have to make decisions about returning teachers who are on contract by April 1st. So April 1st is a big deadline for Wake County Public Schools as far as hiring decisions. Especially here in Wake County, we have year-round schools, as you know, and they're already making those kind of decisions for next year since they'll start in July. The other reason is that right now, the school district is in the process of doing their budget for next year. So the school district creates a budget, they present it to the school board makes their changes, they adopt it, and then they have to present that budget to the Wake County Board of County Commissioners. That has to be done on May 15th. So obviously you can see, if we're making all these budgeting decisions before the legislature even comes back on May 16th, it's just going to be too late. So we really need to emphasize to our representatives that this has to be done soon. We are hoping that they were going to be doing it in January, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So we just have to keep the pressure on, keep the heat on them to do it in March like they've promised. Excuse me, I'm taking a drink. Another way that you can contact your representatives is just to use social media. Most of them have accounts. They have Facebook pages. They have Twitter accounts. You might have heard about something that we did a couple weeks ago. A group called Public Schools First NC arranged something called a tweet storm. So if you hear that, they might do another one. I'm thinking if they do call a special session in March. So you just go on, if you're on Twitter, which maybe most of you are for the Washington buses, you can just tweet at your representatives. There's a hashtag, it's hashtag class size chaos. So we just urge you to contact them through social media, tweet, please help us solve class size chaos. just keeping it out in front of them, keeping it in the news, keeping it in the public eye is going to be the most important thing to just keep that pressure on for them to do something in March. I mention a couple of things that aren't on the PowerPoint. One is that if you don't watch a show called Education Matters, it's a show, if you're interested in learning more about education policy and things that are going on in North Carolina education law, it's called Education Matters. It's from the North Carolina Public School Forum, and it's on Saturday nights at 7:30 on WRAL. It's on, all the episodes are on their website. I was on the show a couple weeks ago talking about this issue, but most importantly, they just did a show about it this past weekend, and they interviewed Senator Chad Barefoot, who is from Wake County, and he had a very interesting interview about when he was confronted with questions about why isn't this funded and why aren't you doing anything about it. So it was very informative. So if you're interested, go on there and watch that. The other thing is that North Carolina PTA, we actually just passed a resolution at the beginning of January about the class size mandate, saying that we wanted it to be fixed as well. And as Mr. Grant mentioned, we are not against smaller class sizes. The National PTA actually has a position statement on class sizes, and we support them. That is a national platform of National PTA. But like Mr. Grant said, you cannot implement a class size mandate, lowering class sizes over a year without a long rollout, allowing school districts to have time to build the infrastructure needed, and you can't do it without the funding. So those are, please don't mistake PTA or anybody's position. We want these smaller classes. I mean, of course, having my third grader in a class of 17 students is great, but I want all the other things that come with that, and that includes all the teaching positions needed to be funded. On my PowerPoint, there's some frequently asked questions, so I won't go into that too in detail, but a lot of people have asked, like, what are the possible solutions? I mean, one would be full funding. One would be a long rollout of the mandate. Some people have offered is a separate allotment for specialist teachers, which now we're hearing they might bring back. So you can also provide additional waiver mechanisms for school districts who can't comply. You can allow school districts to have more that flexibility, restoring what they used to have in that flexibility. So those are some possible solutions. A lot of people ask us who came up with these guidelines and didn't they know this was going to happen? And we don't really know. A lot of the legislators, they refer to the study that they saw in Tennessee about lower class sizes, but that study was well funded. And so that's the whole issue here, is that we feel like they just dove into this kind of quickly and without a lot of retrospect on how it was going to affect, kind of a domino effect. Well, if you do this, then this, all these other things have to be in place. So we don't know what would happen if the mandate goes forward. And like I said before, school districts can't comply. We already know there's schools in Wake County who cannot comply with it. And we don't really know what the punishment is going to be for the school districts who can't comply. That has never kind of been answered by the legislature. The only thing in the law is that they can not pay our superintendent. Basically, that is the only punishment that's in the law, but we don't know exactly what would happen if we couldn't comply with it. So I'm just going to wrap up by saying that if you have questions or want to get more information about how to get involved with this issue, how to contact your representatives, if you have questions about how this is going to affect maybe another school, like if you're going up to middle school or your high school. We've gotten a lot of feedback with the Wake County PTA from other schools, so feel free to contact me. My email, you can contact me at president@wakepta.org. And it's also on the PowerPoint if you don't have that. And then if you want more resources about PTA and advocacy with PTA, I'd love to talk to you, or go on the website, pta.org. Wizardpta.org is our Washington PTA website. So do we have any questions or anybody? No?
Right.
Mr. Grant.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to learn about some of the challenges we face and how we can problem solve together to make for the best outcome for our kids and our teachers. Again, if you are watching this at a later point and it's a recorded broadcast, you can still email me at bgrant@wcpss.net or Ms. Von Haefen, who has her email on the PowerPoint, and let us know your thoughts, any suggestions you have, or further questions. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to you joining us next time for our next live stream principal chat here at Washington GT Magnet.